Hello learners, welcome to the course Migrated Women's Literature. In our today's lecture, we would be talking about South Asian drama in Canada. In the previous lectures, we had talked about South Asian migration to Canada. We had also discussed various phases of South Asian migration to Canada, and we had also talked about the beginning of South Asian literature in Canada. As we know that the immigrants of the first phase were illiterate. Therefore, writing anything or producing literature was something that was nearly impossible for them. And it was only after the second phase of migration and then after the third phase of the migration, people got into writing and producing literature. It took a while for Indian English drama to gain recognition and become popular among English-speaking middle-class Indians living in cities. The public's perception of theatre changed only after the size of the audience grew and society started to regard it as a respectable art form. Even though the genre started to take shape, literary criticism on it is still in its infancy. Theatre from the South Asian diaspora has not flourished as much as literature, despite the former being rich and well established. Critics cite a number of causes for the literary branch's low status. Renowned critic Aparna Dharwadkar analyzes the situation in her research article Diaspora and the Theatre of the Nation. This article was written in 2003. She writes, moreover, while novelists often employ diaspora as the enabling condition but not the subject of narrative, immigrant playwrights can create original theatre only when they distance themselves from their cultures of origin and embrace the experience of residence in the host culture with all its problems of acculturation and identity. Still, this literary subgenre is expanding and becoming more and more established in the host nations. Noting the dual significance of the significant study is likewise imperative. First off, because of their size and contribution to the immigrant countries, the South Asian diaspora is becoming more significant in these nations. The second argument is that theatre represents human element and the problems of human society more authentically than other forms of art. The 7 nation states of South Asia are as follows: Bhutan, Nepal, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and the Maldives Island. Historian Nilesh Bose describes the word South Asia and he writes, clearly the term South Asia serves only as a geographical boundary marker and not as a description of the various cultures that are included in the region. Because so many different cultures, societies and political contexts are engaged, this social stratum has a very diverse theatre. The world is enormous, as is evident from the regions of the world to which South Asians are still migrating. Since it is impossible to include information about South Asian diasporic theatre in every country, let us focus on Canada, where South Asian theatre is highly active. However, the South Asian literature and theatre are very prominent in the United States, United Kingdom and other nations too. But we will focus on presenting some details related to Canada and South Asian theatre. Furthermore, we only talk about the plays that are written in English. Some prominent theatre companies and writers of South Asian descent who have written about the South Asian population, that is the subject of the study. The South Asian community in Canada. differs slightly from that in the United States. Canada has always been antagonistic towards the South Asian diaspora, while America has long welcomed it. Immigrants thus had to concentrate on integrating their lives and houses into this nation. In addition to dealing with the administration's and the public's objections, they also had to deal with their own personal issues relating to migration before turning their attention to writing. Originally, most of the migrants were laborers arriving between the 1830s and the 1950s. Then, as the South Asian nations gained their freedom, professionals and students began to move there. These young professionals began pursuing jobs in theater, radio, and television. They desired to discuss matters pertaining to them and express their concerns, both private and public, to the society. The South Asian diaspora in Canada recalls its earlier encounters with racism and colonialism. Following much opposition and indignation from this community, the Canadian government and populace began to shift their views. This community's population is today significant and important in a number of ways. Canadian researcher Diana Loeb analyzes their population and writes, South Asian Canadians accounted for over 1 million people in 2001, making up 3% of the country's population. Since the last census, their population has increased at a rate of 33%, far outpacing the country's 4% population growth. Even though they are counted as a single category, Statistics Canada notes that people in this group vary in terms of their ages, mother tongues, degrees of education and income, and religious and ethnic affiliations. The element of South Asian Canadian identification that sets it apart from the ethnography of settler or invader identity and the pedagogical narrative of the Anglo-Celtic settlers. A priori claim to this place is this remarkable difference within. The primary goal of the South Asian community's theatre activities was to express the community's displeasure with their living circumstances and the way they were treated by both the Canadian government and populace. Unlike its American counterpart, this community theatre in Canada had a far more serious ideological foundation. It has been crucial in forming this community's identity. Even while the genre's central theme has always been the negotiating of identities, it became clear that this process had greatly altered it. Diana Loeb emphasizes the function that this art form plays in presenting the impact and the importance of identity formation. She considers that for analyzing the continuous negotiations between présence haitienne, présence européenne, and présence canadienne, South Asian Canadian theatre is a particularly helpful field. Examining South Asian Canadian theatre makes it clear that care must be given when attempting to determine the relative contributions of presence of Asians and presence of Europeans. A historical context is necessary for présence haitienne, the influence, the trajectory that symbolizes the kinship with the ancestral homeland or homelands. It is impossible to interpret présence haitienne as a representation of an actual, pure, pre-colonial South Asian cultural influence. Teesri Dunya publicly declares its role in shaping the target community and its cultural identity. Tisri Dunya Theatre is dedicated to producing socially and politically relevant theatre that supports a multicultural vision of society, promoting interculturalism through works of theatre and creating theatrical styles based on the cultural experiences of visible minorities living in Canada. The theatre company also collaborates with numerous Indian counterparts. Similarly, the Vancouver South, a theatre company, focuses on the plight of the migrants. Dramas such as Sharon Pollock's Komagata Maru Incident, Jesse Thin's Lions of the Sea, Resham Gill's Lesson of a Different Kind, Tisri Dunya's Job Stealer, Rahul Verma's Bhopal and Uma Parmeswaran's Meera are often staged and supported. One noteworthy aspect of South Asian Canadian theatre is its gradual ascent to mainstream Canadian national theatre. Following years of battle for recognition and identity in Canadian society, the bulk of this genre is therefore actively involved in social and political change, even though they still portray problems pertaining to this society and its equivalents in their own countries. It is obvious that these people's diversity in terms of race, religion, culture, and language, when paired with the diaspora's many waves, creates a heady mix. In terms of education, experimentation, religion, and culture, South Asian Canadian writers constitute an astonishingly diverse group. They are vibrant, talented individuals who have been educated in the literary forms of their adopted language as well as their mother tongue. They are also apt in traditional forms of English literature. Rather than arriving as blank slates or begging bowls, ready to be refashioned as Anglo or Franco Canadians, as Diane McGifford has written about the South Asian Canadian immigrants. South Asian Canadians are adamant about including elements of their heritage into their writing because they are proud of their long-standing cultures and customs in terms of education, experimentation, religion, and culture. South Asian Canadian writers constitute an astonishingly diverse group. This holds true for many genres, but take Canadian dramatists of South Asian descent as an example. A type of North Indian village theatre group is called Nautanki. Verma, a renowned playwright of South Asian Canadian dramas, his global perspective motivates him to collaborate on plays. He and Stephen Orlow wrote isolated incidents, which he includes in his collections. The experimental street theatre of Kolkata, then known as Calcutta, which gained popularity in the 1960s, is the inspiration behind another dramatist, Rana Bose's On the Double and Lee Groupe Cultural Montreal, Sarai. The theatre group of which he is a founding member. In order to create multicultural drama, these authors have brought theatrical models and practices from their mother cultures to Canada. Rahul Verma and Rana Bose both wish to redefine multiculturalism in order to de-hyphenate and de-ghettoize it while still valuing their respective cultural identities. Their desire is to have their work assessed with other Canadian plays without being dismissed as quaint, folkloric, or a crossbreed of ethnic drama. The Canadian theatre should be the first to benefit from their efforts. First, fresh perspectives, ideas, and forms bring vitality back to the theatre. Secondly, Their works can contribute to the development of a pluralistic theatre that better captures the spirit of Canada. That's all for today. We will connect again in other lectures. Thank you.